Welcome to the Write Your Own Story podcast. I'm your host, Betsy Leonidas, and the founder of the Write Your Own Story company. Girl, I can tell you right now, you are definitely enough. Here we value service, sisterhood, connection, laughter, and that super genuine, keep it real, tell you like it is honesty. My hope is at the end of each episode, you realize you can do whatever it is you dream about and that you are not alone with what you struggle with. I'm hoping that you are snapping and clapping and hell yes in your way through each one of these episodes. So if this tracks with you, let's get started. I'm so glad you're here. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Write Your Own Story podcast. I'm Betsy Leonidas, your host, and today I want to tell you a story about hope and about miracles. So I'm recording this episode just a few days before Christmas, and it's the season for miracles. And I wanted to share a really personal story that I have shared over and over here in Cincinnati, but I wanted to put it on the podcast because I think it's really important this time of year. And I think it's really important given the climate of the world, sort of the weight of the political climate here in the States, and the weight and heaviness and, I don't know, the exhaustion of everyday life, especially during this season, and the trickiness it can be to navigate. That absolutely miracles happen and that we should all never give up on hope. So I promise after this episode that you will definitely be left feeling hopefully inspired and definitely more hopeful. So miracles, as we all know, come in many shapes and sizes, right? It can be the little thing of making your flight when you didn't think you were going to make it, to the big things of someone's life was saved. My miracle just happens to look like a 70-pound, tall, skinny, blonde Taylor Swift singing, a YouTube short dancing, mischief-making, blonde-haired, blue-eyed cutie pie that I call Adeline, otherwise known around this house as Sis. Adeline is my second. I have 4 children. The rest are boys, so she is queen of the castle and absolutely rules this roost. She is just everything a 5th grade girl should be. She is spunky and spry. She's smart and she's kind. She's a pistol and I love it. She's hilarious and sarcastic. She's athletic and she's Adeline. And you'll totally understand that. For those who know her, absolutely get it. And after this story, I hope you'll get it as well. But Adeline came into this world in a really tricky way. Adeline was born early. Her liver was in failure. Her brain was full of blood, and her kidneys were starting to fail as well. And this all happened within the first 7 days of her life. So the good news is she's amazing. She's still here. She's happy and healthy. But let me tell you all about Adeline's journey and about the miracles that I was able to witness along the way. All right, so let's take a step back. Before Adeline was born, so I'm like 35 weeks pregnant. Hayden is her older brother. He's 2 years old. He toddles into my bedroom and has a really high fever. I'm talking like 104 or something like that. And so he climbs in bed to sleep it off and seems to be totally fine when he wakes up in the morning. I couldn't believe it. Keep him home for the day. He does his thing, but he's in daycare. These high fevers, constant sickness, this is just all part of the game, right, with little kids. So didn't think anything of it. He was fine the next day. A couple of days later, again, I'm 35 weeks pregnant. All of a sudden, I'm not feeling good. I wake up in the morning and something just doesn't feel right. And to the point where I stayed home from work that day and just worked from home. And I wasn't on bed rest. That was the boys. But I was pregnant enough where the idea of going down to the office was way too much. And so I just wanted to be able to put my feet up, work from my laptop, and take it as easy as possible. All was good. I ended up maybe like a couple hours into the day calling the doctor to just be like, hey, something's not feeling good. I'm not feeling good. Would you mind if I came in? Turns out they didn't have any extra appointments that day. So I was like, you know what? Never mind. I'll be fine. Fast forward a couple hours later, and I'm like, man, I need to call again. So I called and I was like, listen, I think I really need to be seen. I'm just really not feeling myself. And so they were able to fit me in. So I called Adeline's dad and was like, hey, heads up, I'm going into the doctor. I'm sure it's totally fine. You don't even need to come. Then a couple hours later before my appointment, I was like, hey, you know what? Maybe you should come. And then before my appointment, I called him and I was like, you need to come get me. I can't drive. Something is not right. You need to come home right now. I can't even explain it. My body was just so uncomfortable. I didn't go into labor with Hayden. I had to be induced. So I'm not a super expert on what it feels like to go into labor, but this didn't feel like going into labor pains. It was just something was wrong and my body knew. We are driving down to the hospital to get checked out. My doctor works in the office in the hospital. So thank God that was convenient. So we're driving down there, driven the drive 1,000 times. And we're joking like, oh my God, what if she comes today? Wouldn't that be so crazy? We have nothing packed, typical second time around parents, nothing packed, nothing prepared. We're like, that would be so crazy. It's probably a 20-minute drive. So we're joking. And as the drive progresses, I get more and more uncomfortable. And by the time we get there, again, both of us have been to the hospital many times. We couldn't figure out where to park. I was in so much pain that I was like, just let me out of the car. And I'm like hiking my way up the parking garage hills to get into the office because I'm like, this baby has got to come out. So I get into the office. I go on the exam table. They try and touch my stomach and I just leap off the table. I am so uncomfortable and in so much pain. So they put me in a wheelchair and they wheel me down to labor and delivery. And I'm like, oh my God, this is actually happening. But I'm freaking out at this point. So they hook me up, put my IV in, hook me up to all the things. I'm like, oh God, here comes another baby. And then all of a sudden, everything stops hurting. My heart rate goes back to normal. My body is no longer in pain. My body temperature feels fine. It's like it never happened. It was the craziest thing. Baby looks good on the monitors. It's not like anything happened in there. And I just was fine. It was the craziest thing. They almost sent me home. But they were like, let's keep you overnight for observation. Fine. Roll down to like a cozy little suite or whatever and get ready to spend the night and be sent home the next day because my kid's not due for another month, even more. So then it's overnight and I'm just chowing on a Jimmy John's sandwich, like a veggie Jimmy John's sandwich, talking to the nurse. She's going on a trip to New York. We're telling her all the great places to go because we used to live there. And all of a sudden, everything changes. My body felt like it was absolutely on fire. The alarms start going off. The heart rate monitor alarms start going off. They came in, turned me over on my side. The intern comes running in and he was like, your baby's heart rate is off the chart, meaning like when you hear the boop on the little heart rate machine, the lower part of the heart rate register was not registering on the machine. Her heart rate was so high. I probably had that all wrong, but that's how I recall it. And so he was like, if your doctor's not here in 30 minutes, I'm taking this baby out. And I was like, hey, how old are you? But thank God she came down. I'm sure he would have been great. Well, you just want your doctor. So she comes down. I'm having an emergency C-section and I am like really unwell at this point. And all I remember is trying so hard to stay conscious because I wanted to meet my daughter. So I knew that I wanted her out. I needed to know that she was okay. I wanted to see her face. And I did exactly that. I must have been in and out. No, I think they pulled her out first. She's out. It's an emergency C-section. They pull her out. I see her. And then I just remember blacking out. I don't know if they pushed me more meds or what, because they were worried that my appendix needed to come out. Turns out my appendix was completely fine. They closed me up. The next thing I know, I'm waking up in recovery. My body still feels like it's absolutely on fire. My mom was down there at this point. She said that when you would touch my skin, it felt like black asphalt on the hottest day of summer. And I remember looking over and seeing Adeline, her dad telling me that she was fine. And then it was really me in the hospital for the next 5 days, just trying to kick this awful fever and this like feeling of pain in my body. Gosh, infectious disease came to see me. I tried every med and it turns out it was just viral. Then there's little Adeline. She's such a little nugget because she's early, but she's not in the NICU. She's with us. She's feeding. And the only thing that is the thing for her is that she's not really feeding a ton of volume. But in order to get kicked out of the hospital and sent home, you have to reach a certain milliliter threshold per bottle for every feed. After 5 days of trying to fix me and me, slowly starting to get better, her feeds were getting there. She was a slow feeder, but she would get there. So we were sent home. When we got home, she was such a quiet baby. She slept all the time. We'd have to wake her for feeds. She'd be, just cute and peaceful while we fed her. For anyone who knows Adeline, that should have been the first sign. You can hear that girl from a mile away. You know when she's around, she is a force and she is a presence. And so the fact that I was like, maybe I just have this like sweet little quiet baby, I was so wrong. So we go in for a weight check, which you have to do after 7 days to make sure that the baby's gaining enough weight. We go into the pediatrician. Everyone's literally passing her around like she is like a little marble. They're like, look, she fits in our palm of our hand. She's so cute. They go in and they weigh her, and the pediatrician comes in and she's like, she's lost more than 10%, which is the telltale sign that she's not getting enough nutrition and she needs to go back into the NICU. And she probably just doesn't have sort of like the developmental milestones of how to suck and swallow and breathe, which apparently in utero around 35 weeks is when I don't know how you figure that out. I don't know. I forget this part, but that was the issue. And they said it was related to how many weeks old she was. No big deal. We're just going to put her in the NICU and get her a feeding tube and give her the nutrition she needs while she learns these skills. Okay, plan sounds good. I'm devastated and super emotional as a mom. They were like, do you want to go back to Good Sam, which has a great NICU, but that's where she was born, or do you want to go to Cincinnati Children's? And I was like, I don't want to go to Children's. That's where the really sick kids go. And so we went to Good Sam. I cried the entire way to Good Sam. I did not want to go back to the hospital. I didn't want my kid to be poked and prodded. I was scary enough having her and I was like, I just want to keep her at home, but I knew it's what we needed to do. So when you check into the NICU, you get hooked up to your feeding tube and they run a standard blood panel. So they took some blood. About an hour later, the panel comes back. And that's when everything changed. It turns out Adeline's liver was in failure. So they can tell that from the blood panel. Her numbers were horrible. Now, the thing with the liver, apparently the liver isn't just for processing alcohol. Sorry, Mom, but that's literally what I thought it was for. I'm sure it was for other stuff too, but really that's what I understood it as its primary function. Mostly joking, but like also for real. But it also controls your internal bleeding. Again, not a doctor, probably saying this all wrong, but this is how I understand it. But it controls your internal bleeding. When you are premature, there are blood vessels in your body, specifically in your brain, that haven't fully hardened or cauterized comes to mind, but that's probably the wrong word as well. But basically, they're still porous. So they needed to do a brain ultrasound on Adeline to make sure that she wasn't bleeding in her brain. We were like, I'm sorry, what? I thought we were just going to the pediatrician to just get like a weight check and they were going to tell me how cute my baby is and I would get to go home and snuggle my sweet, quiet baby. So here we are a couple hours later in the NICU, feeding tube is in, and they bring in the ultrasound machine and just rub it all over her cute little head, and they can see a bleed. She's literally bleeding in her brain. Her liver numbers are horrible, and she's bleeding in her brain, and I don't know what's happening. And the rest of it is kind of a blur. I remember Adeline being hunched over because they were doing spinal taps to figure out if it was meningitis or whatever it could be. The spinal taps were hard to get, so they tried multiple times. I remember the chair I was sitting in watching them do it. Then I remember, her screaming kind of kept getting worse, and I just remember it getting, over several hours, getting worse and worse. More people coming in, the foot traffic in our room, the sort of level of panic really from the doctors and the nurses. They were professional, but you could tell something was wrong, and poor Adeline went from my sweet, quiet baby to just getting like worse and worse in front of our eyes. Her dad was out in the lobby making a phone call because our cell phones wouldn't work there. He was calling home to his family to tell them what was going on. And a nurse said to me, as I was trying to comfort Adeline, she was like, honey, do you want to go to the chapel? And I'm like, the chapel? No, I'm not leaving her side. And she was like, you need to go to the chapel. And I looked at her and I was like, what do you mean? And she was like, your daughter is dying. You need to go pray for her. And I don't remember after that for a while. I remember her dad coming in. I remember telling him. I remember him leaving again to go call his family and tell them it's time to come in town. And while he was still on the phone, our doctor who was helping us, who was wonderful and who just was doing absolutely everything she could to figure out what was going on with Adeline, rotated off shift. Her shift was done. So she had gone home and wished us the best. All of a sudden, she comes in street clothes and she comes right up to me and she said, I know what this is. She was like, on the way home, I called my friend who works at Children's. She's seen this before. She told me it's called enterovirus, and she told me to come back here and put Adeline into an ambulance and send her to her. I had to sit down and I completely lost it. I don't think I had realized how much I had processed in that short amount of time that my daughter was dying and that I was told she wasn't going to make it. And then to have just the sliver of hope, that's all I needed. So her dad comes back into the hospital room at that time, and I am just weeping. The doctor is holding me, and he thought she had passed. And he comes running over, and I just looked at him and I said, there's hope. She knows what this is. She needs to go to Children's. Children's was going to be closer to more resources, have more resources. It was the plan, and we finally had a plan. So they put Adeline in an ambulance. We were not allowed to ride with her in the ambulance, but thank God for the ambulance driver and for the caretakers for taking good care of our precious baby. And we headed to the hospital, and they took her back, and we weren't allowed to go back for a while. They needed to do their own assessment. That was the craziest time, sitting there in the waiting room. And then they came back and told us that her liver is in fact in failure. She needs a liver transplant, but she is 5 times too small for a liver transplant. Her brain is bleeding. It has gone from a grade 1 to a grade 3. The scale is 4. And that we need a miracle. Oh, man, that's a doozy. And so that was it. That's when we put all of our faith in Children's, and we moved in. Thankfully, I don't know. Because Adeline had been sent home, and because this was viral, she was infectious, so she wasn't going into a NICU pod. So we had our own private room, and we slept there every single night for almost a month. We had gone radio silent for a while, family and friends-wise. Our family knew what was going on, but we had really just completely stopped responding to everyone, and no one had any idea. So we finally reached out, and my extended family, my in-laws, came in from New York and lived with our older son, Hayden, for the month that we were there. We would go home to read to him, to put him to bed, to take a shower, and to come back to the hospital. We had friends that we finally sent an email with everything that was going on, and we were constantly checked on, prayed for, supported. I can't even begin to explain to you the impact that had. I did not grow up in a religious home. I never went to church, although I went to Catholic school, but I was constantly talking too much in church. So I really never sat in church for the purpose of understanding the power of prayer. And I get it now. The power of community and the power of prayer, whether it be to the universe or to whomever. We had ashrams in India literally dedicating energy services to Adeline. That's how quickly her story spread. That's how hard people were praying for our kid. So talk about miracles, right? The community was amazing. A miracle in that phone call. Adeline absolutely would not be alive if it wasn't for the phone call of that doctor calling her friend. So we needed a miracle, right? They hooked Adeline up to IVIG. So that is a blood product that basically takes her blood type and multiple donors, and they pool things together to hope that any sort of antiviral, antibody, whatever, for someone who's had enterovirus would be in there and would help her body heal as fast as possible. Because enterovirus to anyone else is just a normal summer fever virus, but if you're pregnant, it puts you in labor. And if you are an infant, it can be deadly. So the IVIG, that's all donated from people taking the time out of their day, the blood literally from their body, and giving it to my daughter to save her life, my 4-pound now daughter to save her life. And it was a constant, almost 30-day drip of blood with IVIG in it. So that is another huge miracle that people take the time out of their day. They go through the discomfort of donating blood. And it is blood products like that literally save people's lives. Again, absolutely miraculous. But here we are, and we are first in rounds every single morning. What I've learned is that if you're first in rounds, again, this is like Grey's Anatomy stuff where people are they're walking around with their carts, and it's like the whole team of people, and they go to each patient and they're giving the rundown for the day of what's the status update and what's the plan of care. And this is a doctor show. So they're all talking. But Adeline's dad and I were never going to miss a round. So we're not doctors, but we stood outside at her door and listened to every single piece of the conversation, asked questions, and they were so kind and welcoming. They welcomed our questions. They were patient in their answers. They listened to our concerns. But to be first in rounds is not good news. But we were, and we were supported and cared for. We also had the most magical nurse. Her name is Robin. I still think about her all the time. We keep in touch, actually. Robin is just one of those bright lights in one of our darkest times. She was all over Adeline's care. Any question we had, she knew the answer. And if she couldn't tell us the answer. She went and found us the answer. And then when we got the answer, she went over the answers with us to make sure that we understood it, that we felt comfortable. She just was motivating and positive, and she was another huge source of hope. When again, I feel like the undercurrent of miracles is so rooted in hope. So here we are, weeks in, numbers aren't getting better, but she's still alive, and we're trying the things. We've got, unfortunately, from the stress of it all, her kidneys are now starting to go into hypertension. So we've got doctors from all across the hospital hanging out with us. But we would welcome anyone with open arms who would take a crack at saving our kid. And then what I have learned from this and what I have found is over time, things start to shift. And here's what I know about Adeline. All this kid needs ever in life is a shot. She is a force, and she can do anything. And I think that holds true for all of us. All Adeline needed, she just needs a shot. She needs the support that she needs to give this thing a shot, and she needs some time. And that's exactly what we had in the hospital. We had the support of all the blood products, of all the meds for her liver, for her kidneys. We had, a million doctors and nurses coming in and out. We had child life for when Hayden would come to visit her, like making it fun and not scary. We literally slept on chairs and in a cot for almost a month. We had bed changes and like people constantly checking on us. It was just the most supportive thing to give our kid the best shot possible. And let me tell you, it worked. I just got goosebumps. All of a sudden, her numbers start going in the right direction. All of a sudden, we're not first in rounds anymore. We're moving down the line and having to patiently wait for our turn. Let me tell you, I'll wait happily. We are starting to meet with speech and PT and learn how to feed and all sorts of like things that are indicating that maybe she really has a shot here. And our doctors are now smiling when they walk into the room. I feel the whole energy in her room just shift and lighten. Our emails to our friends and our family are now encouraging with bits of hope, a lot of hope. I'm not going to lie. We would not give up on hope. And she's opening her eyes. I can't tell you how amazing it was. We were actually walking to lunch one day and I turned around and her eyes were open. And I sat there and just looked at her for hours because I just wanted to see my kid's eyes. And she all of a sudden is ripping her own IV lines out. Here comes my feisty girl. She's, nope, don't like it. I hate it. Rip it out. She's too much. And the next thing, I am unhooking, not me, but we are unhooking her from her IVs, from her feeding tubes, from her oxygen, from all the wires. I am giving her a bath and she's coming home. I still literally can't believe it. Not only is she healthy enough to come home, but we're now so supported that she was in a long-term study because she was a high-risk patient. Let's be real. She probably had 100 doctor's appointments the first year of her life and was high risk in the high-risk clinic, seeing a neurologist, nephrologist, liver docs, any physical therapy, speech for years. But it worked. My daughter, who I was told to go pray because she is dying, is now the happiest, healthiest, most highly functioning, typical child that you can imagine. And it's almost like it didn't happen. It absolutely is one of the biggest miracles I have ever witnessed. Not only is she alive, she can walk, she can talk, her brain fully functions, her kidneys are completely fine, and her liver is completely healed. I'll never forget my dad, when she first went into the hospital, they're the same blood type. So he comes crashing through and is pulling doctors and nurses aside and was like, take part of my liver. She can have it. We're the same blood type. But that's when we learned she was way too small. And here she is. She doesn't take a drop of medicine now for anything that happened to her. It is an actual miracle. But then let's not forget, those are the big miracles, right? And just take a minute and soak all that in. We all thought, and here she is. She's amazing. She's happy. She's healthy. That phone call was a miracle. That literally saved her life. Adeline would not be alive today if that doctor hadn't called the other doctor, and everything transpired from there. Family and friends were the biggest miracles. A safe place to stay with her in the space in the hospital room to stay was a miracle. IVIG and all those people who donated blood was a miracle. Robin and Dr. Melton and Dr. Merhar, who cared for her like she was their own, is a miracle. Family who supported us through everything was a miracle. And the rest, it's history. And it has taken me probably 8 years. She's 10 now, 10 and a half, to be able to tell this story without completely losing it. It really, it did a number on me, for sure. When the rug gets pulled out from you like that and it's your child, I don't know. That one really got me good. And I also really struggled with guilt for a really long time because she lived and so many kids don't. My friend lost her dad soon after Adeline came home from the hospital. And my friend, of course, was devastated. And it really racked me to be able to sit with, why do I get to keep Adeline? And here she has lost her father. And I still don't understand how that works. And one of the other things that I've really had to learn is when it gets really that mysterious and feels that heavy, whether it be guilt or worry, sometimes you just have to let it go. And that has taken time, but I have. And I just embrace the miracles that our family has been given, the gift that she is to this world. I have no doubt that she is going to lead such a full life. She leaves an impact on anyone she's around. She is just amazing. I think my point is, during the hard seasons of life and amongst the hard climate of the world and in a season of miracles, I just want you to remember, don't ever give up on hope and don't ever give up on miracles, because my sweet Adeline, my sissy bear, sissy pants, Adeline Elizabeth, is here to say she's a miracle. You guys, I'm smiling ear to ear for those who aren't watching on YouTube. She is just the best. And don't get me wrong, she is everything a fifth grade girl is. She's sassy. She's all the things, but she is an amazing big sister. She's an amazing little sister. She is a great friend. She's a heck of a volleyball player and lacrosse player. She is smart and hardworking, and she is sarcastic and hilarious. And she just has this light, and I swear, her spirit just knows that she is lucky to be here, and she doesn't take advantage of it for one single day. Thank you guys for listening. And for those of you listening who are on our team of prayers and hope and wishes, man, oh man, thank you. You guys are the best. Whew, that was a doozy. I'll never forget. And when I put her to bed at night, we're girl talking or watching reels or, I don't know, being silly and gabbing. And then we finally quiet down and I'm scratching her head as I'm putting her to sleep. And it never is lost on me. I'm overwhelmed every time with gratitude that she's still here. For those who are struggling or are feeling the weight, just all you can do is have hope and don't give up on miracles. Thanks, guys, for listening. Hope you have a great day. That's the end of this episode, but promise me, you won't stop here with whatever it is you're feeling or dreaming about. I hope you leave today feeling empowered to live life just as you see fit. If this podcast was helpful to you, it would mean the world to me if you could leave a review on whatever platform you're listening on. I genuinely just want to help women live the life they dream about. So if this type of content tracks with you, subscribe to this podcast or visit our website, writeyourownsstory.co, to download digital courses or to grab a journal and a mug to just dream in and dream with. It's your life, lady. Do you. And just remember, I'm rooting for you and you've totally got this.